Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Doing great. I think we'll give it a couple minutes, see if other people show up, and then yeah, here we are. So
Okay.
Hello.
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 We're just giving it a couple minutes, see if other folks show, and then we'll get into it.
Sure, sure. Is there a meeting notes or agenda doc?
Yeah, so I just made one. I'll put the link in chat. I'll try and add that to the calendar at some point too. Not much in it yet. Feel free to add anything you want to talk about. So I figure this is a bit of a kickoff meeting, so we can kind of go from there, maybe have more of a plan in the future. Can you edit that, by the way? I did just make it, so
Um, oh, let's see, there's an edit button. I can.
okay,
Let's
great.
see.
Always great when that works. Okay.
Well, let's see, I can edit. Can I save? Sorry, I'm new to this. Enter it to the notes CNCF. That's
Yeah,
cool.
no problem. Yeah, I see your edit, so hope that it looks like it's all working. So perfect.
Oh, okay. It's like live.
Yeah, it's like a live.
Got it. Okay.
It's kind of like Google Docs, except that way, if people can't use Google, it all still works. So
Nice.
yeah, it's 3 past. I think we can get going, and we'll start with intros and stuff so people can join as they join. Hi everyone, welcome to our first ever supply chain security technical community group meeting. So um, I don't have a real. I'll put the notes doc again because I think that Zoom deletes the chat history. So I made a notes doc that eventually will go into that calendar as well. And then, yeah, so I figure today we'll do some intros, talk about why we are interested in software supply chain security, and then see if there's anything we want to kind of like put on the agenda as like things we want to work on in the future, talk about more, and kind of goals for this group. I have a couple of ideas, but also just curious what people want from this, and then we can kind of go from there. So I'll start. Oh, and this meeting is being recorded, by the way, so just so everyone's aware that that is happening. If anyone's not comfortable with that, please DM me or something, and we'll figure that out. But yeah, that just that way people in different time zones and stuff can still see what's going on. But yeah, I'm Marina. I'm a research scientist at Adara. And I'm one of the co-chairs of CNCF tag security and compliance. Basically, and during my PhD, I did a lot of work in software supply chain security, especially around secure software updates. So this is a topic that I care a lot about and just yeah, want to help push it forward. So excited to be here. Um, I'll pass it off to Camilla, and we can that way we know who's talking next, if that's okay with you.
Hi, so I'm Camila. I used to be a software engineer and now I migrated to cybersecurity 2 years ago. I work as a cloud security engineer, but I'm very interested in application security, especially supply chain. And I'm here to learn. I followed CNCF or tech security for a while. I joined a few meetings before, but I just wanted to learn more about supply chain security. So I'm here to learn and help as well with what I can.
I can
Oh,
go
I forgot to
next.
say, sorry, I forgot to say
Oh,
I'm based
yeah.
in Ireland. I'm from Brazil, but I'm based in Ireland. That's why it's dark in here.
I'm Trask. I am. uh, a long time member in the OpenTelemetry community, on the OpenTelemetry Governance Committee, and participate in the OpenTelemetry Security SIG. And my interest here is I haven't been involved in anything at the CNCF level before, um, but security seems like something that would be potentially very common across all of the CNCF projects. And I know that we in OpenTelemetry struggle with um, all like what kind of guidance to provide. We have, I think, like 75 GitHub repos and over 100 maintainers of those repos. And so um, having consistency and guidance for them. People who, I mean, a lot of these people don't care about security, or I mean, they do care, but like it's just they're in it for the writing code, maintaining, doing the normal reviewing code, that normal thing, and um, so
They
not
want their
always.
software to work, and security happens to be part of working.
Yes. So how to, so we want to, you know, uh, want to make it easy for all of these maintainers to embrace that and give them very specific guidance on what they should do. Right now, it's kind of, well, we can get into what we've done and not done later, but yeah, that's my interest is can we codify and whether this is the right place to do that work. Um, uh, Guidance as explicit or as concrete as possible for maintainers to follow.
I'm Evan Anderson. I've got a couple different hats that bring me here. One of them is like Trask. I'm a maintainer on a project that has, I think we only have about 80 or so repos, but a similar, explosion of repos due to pluggability. That project is Knative. I'm also a maintainer on the OpenSSF Minder project, which was started at StackLock, but then donated to the OpenSSF, and StackLock has since exited the project. But I'm still here. And the goal of Minder was to help organizations achieve consistent guardrails on their supply chains without necessarily having to go the full on Rails declarative route that, for example, Google and the Eclipse Foundation do, where the only way that you can change your configuration is through some other configuration system that will effectively terraform over whatever your existing permissions and supply chain stuff is. I believe in that stuff, but it's a big lift for a lot of people to get from I click around in the GitHub UI to here's some configuration language I need to use that's totally different and is kind of off in a corner. So there's only the documentation that we wrote as we went along. So those are a couple of the hats that bring me here. The last hat is that I am also one of the co-chairs of Tag Security and Compliance, and I would like to see this effort succeed. But it does seem like there's a few different places that we could go here. And one is, guidance for maintainers. And another one is guidance for end users. Hey, I'm trying to deploy, Knative or OpenTelemetry or one of these other projects. What should I be worrying about or thinking about, there? And is it the same set of things that I worry about on my own internal containers that I build, or is it a different set of things? Because the threat models might not be the same.
Yeah, I think those things aren't mutually exclusive too. I think we can provide different sets of guidance over the just do one first, right? Over the course of time and hopefully.
They're not mutually exclusive. It's more a question of where we want to spend our efforts.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think so like I should find the link because I know that there is like a I don't know what we called it, a software supply chain best practices guide, I think it's called, that TaxReady made a few years ago.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it's very broad, right, in scope. I can find a link for folks who are curious, but it's very broad scope. So I feel like there's definitely space to be a little bit more concrete, like Trask was saying, and a little bit more like um, specific. I think in that doc, we were trying very hard not to like pick winners in particular technologies that you should use or whatever. And I still don't want to say like this is the only correct path, but maybe there's space to be like this is a path that you could like an a set of tools that you could use to achieve some of this stuff, just to make like a more focused set of guidance, which I think there's. I don't think that
I mean,
I've
I
seen
think
that.
I think there's also room for multiple recipes. Like, here's one recipe for success. Feel free to contribute another. We'll discuss it, and if it feels roughly equivalent in safety, we're happy to add it. If it's actually totally crazy, then you'll get feedback that, hey, you need to tighten stuff up.
I like that. Yeah, that's kind of the documents that I've seen at the higher, like at the CNCF level, have been, I mean, they're good, but they're very general and they're often fairly lengthy. And if I just pass those on to all of our maintainers, to just kind of glaze over.
Yeah, it's that same problem you were saying, where if someone just wants to write code, they just want to know what should I do to make this secure, right? Even if they want to do it,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah.
What are, I like and anything that we can automatically check is really ideal because then I can tell them, hey, you just need to make this green, these checks green. And yeah, that helps a lot.
Yeah, that could be an interesting project of like trying to determine those metrics that are measurable, right? That we could, because like once you have the metrics, it's pretty easy to make them check marks or whatever for folks. So
Yeah, and I've seen a couple, like we're using the scorecard, um, which I've found helpful for some things. Um, and I had talked, there was, I think, some other work coming out of the tag security around plugging into LFX Insights for some more checks. Like even if it's metadata driven, like a YAML file in the repo where, people certify like, yes, we've checked this. I mean, the automatic is obviously the best because then we know that it's up to date and it's still valid. But I know in some cases it requires, sort of maintainers to assert certain things.
yeah, and like you said on that, we should definitely check in with that other ongoing effort with the LFX insights just to make sure there's no duplication there. But yeah. Cool. And any other kind of like thoughts more broadly about, goals for this group before we kind of narrow down and figure out what we want to focus on? And also like just are folks more interested in general in like getting down and like writing some guidance, writing some tooling, or in more like learning more about the space, figuring out solutions to new attacks and stuff like that? Like where are people coming from? Because we can do either here. I just want to make sure we're meeting the goals of everyone here. So
My personal feeling is that we actually have a lot of defenses that we know about that we haven't implemented. And so I'd rather see us um, stop tripping over our own feet, is my personal preference. But I have no problem with people who want to, go off and explore new frontiers and find that stuff. But yeah, my personal goal is to have people stop tripping over their own feet so much.
And by that, do you mean like, I don't know, putting together existing stuff into easier tooling or guidance, or like what does
Yeah.
that mean to you?
Uh, a couple examples of stuff that I would sort of term tripping over your own feet would include stuff like the Shai Hulud worm that was spreading through um, running, npm install and then pre-install hooks that went and stole your static npm credentials and uploaded, all the modules you had access to, put the worm into them so that it would spread to more stuff. And trying to remember which it was. There was a GitHub Actions vulnerability that I'm thinking of. Maybe it was the review dog.
TJ Actions.
TJ Actions, yeah. Where it seemed like, a couple of things, pinning your dependencies and potentially limiting their permissions could substantially reduce the overall impact of that type of vulnerability. And in both of those cases, this is a case where we built tooling to make things easy, but we didn't make doing dangerous things hard. We made doing dangerous things easy too. Is my opinion.
What's your proposed fix there? Just out of curiosity, like what do you think we can do to help that? Is it getting people to use these tools correctly? Is it helping influence tool authors to make
I think it's a mix of pushing tool authors to add safer defaults and making it easier to apply the best practices that we've already claimed, exist to reduce these impacts. We had a debate between Justin Kapos and William Woodruff a few weeks ago in Tag Security about dependency cooldowns. So rather than updating your dependencies the moment that there's a new version, like maybe wait 24 or 48 hours and see if somebody flags like, hey, there's malware in this before you go and update it. I feel like, some tools support that. It would be nice to say like, hey, I'm actually not on the security bleeding edge. Like, I'm not going to catch this stuff. Let other people go ahead of me. Is my, if I could roll that out to 90% of the open source projects that really weren't very careful, I would. And then, the folks who are on top of it, I would say, yeah, you go first. You have a paid security team or something, you know what you're doing. Which would have really slowed down Shai Hulud as a specific example. This countermeasure to this attack.
Yeah, that makes sense. So maybe like one of the goals here can be like taking existing guidance, existing best practices, and kind of comparing that to what's happening and kind of seeing where a combination of guidance or other things can kind of improve that. So it seems like yeah, there is like there are best practices that exist and there are like reasons people aren't always following them, right? So how can we do that? And that I think that definitely comes back to some of the other stuff we talked about around measurable metrics, around guides. But like those
pinning GitHub Actions is a huge pain to do manually. If you don't have a tool, you're not going to do it, or you're going to do it real badly.
I like this so far. I like this as a kind of a general goal of the group, right? How can we provide more concrete things that make things more secure, but also more usable to the people who need to use them. To kind of not compete with some of the other I don't know, thought leadership around new attacks and all that kind of stuff, but really just kind of coalesce the stuff we already know. At least as a place to start. Cool. And so then concretely, where or any other thoughts here before I move on?
Oh, we didn't, I guess this is probably outside of this group. Uh, uh, CVE, one of issue we have in open telemetry that we could use more guidance on is just the general CVE handling process, but I think that's probably outside of supply chain. So
I think it is
Um,
in I would say. I think it is in that insofar that when like the update process after CVE, I think is solidly a supply chain question. But like the reporting stuff and stuff like that, I'd say would just be more general security. And that's definitely something, in tag security that we get asked about a lot from projects is especially with teams with less resources, like, someone reports a CVE to them and they don't know, how to handle it correctly. But
yeah, how to like most of our maintainers have never done like CVE scoring,
yeah.
um, uh, wondering like what should we do if, what's the threshold for releasing an immediate patch versus rolling it into a monthly.
Yeah. And I think some people aren't always familiar with like the how to do like a private disclosure situation too. There's tools on GitHub and stuff for, private PRs and stuff. But if you're in an open source project, you might not usually use those. So yeah. Um, yeah. Um, yeah, I think that's definitely probably out of scope for this particular group, but is definitely something that could use some guidance.
I mean, I'm not sure it's out of scope for this particular group. Um, it's sort of at the intersection between maintainers and end users because until the maintainers issue a CVE, the end users don't necessarily know that there's a big problem. And then once they do, for a certain set of people, it becomes, here's a fire that needs to be put out. So you can certainly go the Linux kernel route and say every kernel vulnerability or every kernel bug is a potential vulnerability. Congrats, you get all the CVEs. But that's probably not actually helpful to your end users.
Another possible intersection is around like dependency updates. So CVEs in your dependencies and how and whether those roll up into your project.
And also Vex.
What's Vex?
Vulnerability exchange, exploitability exchange format, I believe. It is a way of indicating, hey, this vulnerability in one of my dependencies either applies to my software or does not because, hey, yes, there's this vulnerability here. If you allow an arbitrary regular expression and you're like, we never allow an arbitrary regular expression to this library. Like, yes, there's a CVE
Right.
there, but we don't need to update it because we don't use it in a vulnerable way.
Oh, cool. I didn't know there was a actual like a standard way to express that.
Ish. Where do you find the Vex documents for your dependencies is not well defined. So there's a format for expressing it, but you may or may not be able to find what the project has published. But, if more people are using it, it will make it more attractive to figure out the discovery part of it. If nobody's using it, then the notion that I could find it is no good because there's not going to be nothing there, guaranteed.
What's the format called? I can't remember that you you bundle up all your dependencies into this one kind
SBOM.
of state. SBOM, yes. I don't know if that's relevant.
It is related to
Like,
SBOMs, yes.
I'm just throwing out random things. Also, the GitHub, they have the new feature for not assertions. It's their signing
Attestations?
attestations. Yes, yes.
And is the question like what to do with them? Or
Yeah, yeah. Should we be using them? Does it replace, where we used to publish, MD5 hashes, which many of our repos aren't anyway. Although, I mean, I'd say most of OpenTelemetry a good amount of OpenTelemetry gets published to like your standard uh, artifact repositories that manage a lot of that. But there are a good number of artifacts that are only published to GitHub releases. So, yeah, what kind of guidance on attestation slash signing slash
I think
SBOM?
I think maybe some consistent guidance on that could also be a helpful piece of the like recipe book for success. Um, as an amusing thing, when I was working at Stacklock, we started signing the Minder binary using attestations um, with several people who had worked on the SigStore project and were very familiar with all of this. And so we published the signature, um, the sort of signature that we made, but we didn't publish the public key that we had used. That's you generate this and then you get a certificate for it and you use it and then you throw away the private key. Well, we threw away the public key too. So the verification was very hard for about 4 or 5 releases until we fixed that. So yeah, a cookbook of if you do it this way and tell your consumers to do it this way, then they can make sure it's actually from you would be handy.
yeah, signatures. Yeah, one of my pet peeves in security basically is things that people sign and then never give a process for how to verify it. What does it actually mean? Anyway,
How do I use this thing?
yeah.
Yes.
Um,
And I like this idea of like this group defining recipes as a way to kind of not leave these general documents because I feel like the general documents say have all of these things. It's just like what for those of us who aren't steeped in this world, it's a long ways from there to what we should specifically be doing in our project.
yeah, this is sounding great. Camilla, did you have any other thoughts or like topics that you're interested in as well before we go on here?
Um, no, I thought everything was interesting. But I was thinking about something that I was reading here in the notes about comparing the best practice with and how they would defend against attacks. So I was thinking, is something that we are going to look at the latest attacks related to supply chain and bring here to talk about? Or is there a place, and also like, is there a place where you can have a list, or I don't know, where we have listed the latest attacks related to supply chain security? I know that the attack security had a list, but I don't know if it's updated, and I don't know if it's only related to supply chain security. But I was just thinking if I don't know if it would be something for this group to maintain a list like that, but at least like bring to the meetings what are the latest attacks, and then compared to the best practice, it would be something that we would like to do.
Okay, yeah. And I think that catalog does exist, and I do think that would be a good purpose here is as new stuff comes out, making sure it gets added. Because I think right now it's kind of I'll call it best effort maintained, where basically if people open PRs, they're often reviewed, but it's not very actively like looked at. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
we can help with that, being a little bit more intentional. Um, yeah, and I think there's definitely space here to both like look at stuff going on, current events, at the same time as doing these kind of work outcomes. So I think that might, you know, to keep us all appraised of what's going on. So sounds great. Very cool. And like maybe we can have some sort of formal way. I think in the tax security meetings, we'll often like start the meeting with like a community demo. And there might be a way to do that here too, where we kind of start out with like, I don't know, 5 to 20 minutes of someone talking about some latest attack that happened that week. And then we can go into kind of focusing on some kind of working items. If that makes sense to people. And then we can sort of, we can make it organized where we kind of rotate who has to read up on stuff going on and stuff like that to keep it up to date. Yeah, I can put together some brief organization around that too, if that sounds interesting to people and it's not just something I said. Cool. Awesome. Yeah. So and then I'll also add a thing at the bottom of this for like to-dos. Yeah, for action item, not the other one. Um, okay, cool. And yeah, and then I can maybe do that next week and then also create some sort of organization for people signing up to do it. That's the action item there. And then so it sounds like we really like this idea of recipe books, and we have a lot of cool ideas of topics for them. Is this sounding right? So I guess the question is, which of these topics do we think would make a good like guinea pig topic to try and make one of these recipe books? And then I think that'll give us a better sense of how to do this if we try it out. And in general, I think that the smaller the scope, the better for anything open source, collaboration wise, just because make sure we get it done. And also, I think the shorter these recipe books, the more useful they'll be to busy people and busy maintainers. I think that's the whole problem with the existing guidance, right? It's too long. So, anyone have like a favorite thing we've talked about today that they think would make a good narrow scoped topic?
Or something that you're needing to do for your projects anyway, for your work, and you're like, hey, maybe I can get someone else to do the work for me.
I can definitely put some thought into it this week and put like some I can make a big list basically of things that are I'm immediately interested in from the open telemetry side.
Okay, yeah, that'll be great. And then I guess so we can circle back on that next week, kind of commit to something. And then maybe also the other thing to think about is what to do with them once we write them. I think we could again, just because of like we could very easily get tag security to kind of host the final results. Maybe try and get something broader in the CNCF for more reach.
I was going to say, is this something we could put on contribute.cncf.io?
Yeah, maybe. I think we could. That might be another thing to work on. Before the next meeting is chatting with folks. Yeah, you think? I think yeah. I don't know who maintains that particular one, but just see if they're interested in this or yeah, we could do blog. I think the CNCF blog is probably an option, but I'm not sure exactly the reach of that. So another thing to think about where we want to do it, and we can start talking to those folks and see if they're interested. Because we can do it ourselves, but I feel like somewhere that already has an audience will be a good spot for it.
Well, the other thing I was going to say is we should think about whether these are point in time or stuff that we intend to sort of maintain and update. If we want to do them and then not have to maintain them, then a blog post is great. If we want to keep them up to date, then a blog post is like kind of weird because you're going back and updating a blog post from 2 years ago. And nobody knows to look at that. So I don't have a strong opinion other than, we should pick something that matches our intent.
Yeah, I mean, I always like the idea of things being maintained, but I definitely think that if we're not going to maintain it, it's better to be honest that it's a point in time. Um, just so folks know what they're looking at. Um, yeah.
Maybe the blog is a good place to start, and then if we've got enough energy and enthusiasm, we can move them to some place where they're collected and maintained after
I like
we've
that. So
got
we'll do
three.
like one kind of proof of concept recipe, put it in a blog, share it out there, see if we get kind of excitement, enthusiasm, and then we can turn it into something bigger and more maintained if that makes sense. Yeah, because I worry with like if it's just the four of us doing this the whole time, I worry if we do like five of these, we'll start to just spend the whole time maintaining. But if we get like, interest from elsewhere and stuff, we could probably keep doing that.
Is it a uh is it something that we could, for kind of long-term maintenance of these, that could we roll that up to the CNCF, the broader security tag, or I don't really know how things work at the CNCF level, but I would personally, I think it would be very helpful for projects to be able to point to, something that is maintained just in a CNCF GitHub repo. I don't know what the kind of appropriate places are.
Yeah, I think I can circle back this week with other folks in tag security, see what the interest there is. There's like a general meeting on Wednesday. The tricky thing there is just it's just time. It's just if people have the time to do it properly. Um, my hesitation here is always that like um yeah, because if we don't do it properly, then people might get the wrong idea of the state of it. Um, yeah, I don't know if Evan, you have a thought there.
Oh, I mean, everyone would always like someone else to sign up to do the maintenance. Um, Statement. Like, I would love to, be able to just pull in a bunch of new contributors and, get them up to speed and have them take over all the maintenance on a bunch of the projects that I do so I could go off and do something new. Um, but I think having tag security as a backstop might be reasonable if we can show that, like, they're unlikely to be the primary effort for the next, I don't know, 6 months, a year, something like that. Like, we've just started. So, like, promising that we'll maintain something for 5 years is not a promise we can make. Um, and similarly, when tag security looks at this, they will say, so we already have this supply chain compromises catalog that is, I don't feel it's unfair to say it's indifferently maintained. Marina can disagree, but I think it's fairly indifferently maintained. It was at one point very lovingly maintained.
Yeah, no, I think there's people who still care about it, but most of what they have time to do is review PRs that other people write, which I think then people do review them. It's just that they don't write them. So
Yeah.
that's the um
Um, and so, we have to think about, okay, we're adding a puppy, to the set of requirements, and you know, who's going to be picking up after a 4-year-old dog when it goes out every day, and you know, if this seems useful and valuable, someone will come along and say to do that. Doing it, you know, get, we're going to have the puppy, and then we know we're going to walk away from it, is a lot harder to pitch people on before they've met the puppy. And that's a terrible metaphor. Sorry. Never met a metaphor I couldn't take too far and beat into the ground.
um yeah, but I think it's worth circulating the idea though. Especially
I
because
guess it kind of depends on what our output is, like what we're creating, like if it's more reference documentation or if it's integrating things into tooling like the LFX insights.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in my ideal like world scenario, it would just be LFX Insights that runs against projects and repos and
And the insights team would
reports.
be it. Yep.
Um, yeah, I mean,
That's okay.
we would contribute like to but like as far as ownership, like it's a piece of code there, we can add, remediation guides into the tooling itself so that it spits out, hey, you didn't meet this, but here's a recipe to go off and do it.
Yeah.
That's an interesting idea, yeah, because I think the CNCF does, I think, help pay for like, full-time engineers to maintain the LFX insights. So I think that's a great place, for it to live. And they're already doing that, right? So I think it's not like unreasonable for us to, to make good
It adds on
content.
to an existing project rather than
Yeah,
creating a
exactly.
new thing. Yeah.
Um, yeah. But maybe that's a good kind of long-term place for this all to live. Um,
I think it would help with the adoption, especially, and the more adoption we get, the more, well, A, questions, but B, possible contributors. Uh, Double-edged sword there, of course.
okay, this is great. Yeah, I think we have stuff to think about for next time. Stuff around security news, stuff around what topics we want to do for this first recipe, um, and maybe some chatting with folks who maintain these other things to make sure that there's interest. Um, yeah, anything else folks want to go over today? We have time, but there's no need to fill it if we're if we're done.
Uh, is the meeting cadence weekly
Oh
for
yes,
this
that's a
group?
great question. It is currently meet weekly on the calendar. Um, I figure we start there, and if we want to go bi-weekly or something, that would be fine too. Um, Depending on how much synchronous versus asynchronous stuff we're doing. Um,
Cool. I'll kind of prepare for next week, sort of an overview of the different things that we're using in different tooling that we're using in open telemetry projects. Um, that would give us a possible uh, choices of things to pick from.
okay, yeah, that would be great. Um, Very cool. Thanks, everyone. Excited about all of this. So,
Yep.
see you all
Yeah,
around.
thanks for organizing us.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Bye.
Bye.